Welcome to the Patriot Perspective. My name is Gregory Lykov, and I'm currently joined here with Ofer Adar.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to September 17th iteration of the Patriot Perspective. Today, we have a jam packed episode for you guys. We're going to go through a whole host of events. We're looking at the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates. We'll look at the UN reports accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. We'll look at updates from the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation. So, a lot to get into today. We'll let you start off with the first story, Greg.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to begin by speaking about the federal interest rates. So it's been a conversation for months about Donald Trump wanting the Fed to finally cut the interest rates to help people buy a home, help people get a mortgage, and generally get our economy back on track. We see that there was a small cut here of about 0.25%. But Ofer, what are your initial reactions of it? Is this a good move? Is this a little bit too early? Did it come too late? What are we trying to see here?
Yeah, there's so many differing opinions. Many people for months have been badgering Powell about lowering it beforehand. So throughout the August and July sessions, whenever the Federal Open Market Committee would convene, they never decided to cut the interest rates. And even now, it's 0.25. It's not anymore. Many people on Trump's team were pressuring the Federal Reserve to cut it by zero point 0.5 or even more potentially. But after the reports about the jobs markets, especially in September and in August, the job market reports were rather poor. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, now with new administration, they've been forced to revise their numbers from 2024 and from 2025 because they've been grossly overestimating the amount of people that are getting hired. And with those numbers being decreased, it shows that there is a massive buildup now in, or rather a lack of employment compared to what we had previously imagined. And so now what people need is plain cash. Companies need cash in order to employ people, to hire them, to open up new offerings. We currently have more job offerings open in the markets than people that are looking for a job. And that's not because we don't have people in this country that could potentially do it, but they're not interested in doing so. And at the same time, the companies themselves, they don't have the wherewithal to provide those potential employees, whether they are defined as unemployed under the U3 metric or the U6 metric, or whether they're not even in the labor participation force accounting at all. So that can change if the base salary, if some of the benefits are raised, and that's going to happen as a consequence of the interest rates going down. It's going to benefit everybody, as like you said, with mortgages, with credit card payments, with car loans, everything. And yes, it's a part of the reason why is because the Trump administration has done a good job during 2025 in reducing inflation. Inflation was at around 2.9% in August, and it was at 2.7%, I believe, in July. So there's been a very slight uptick, and that's why the Federal Reserve is being cautious right now and not lowering it by any more. But it's getting very close to the 2% targets. And as a result, now the onus is on the Federal Reserve to begin kickstarting the economy and allowing a stream of money to get in order to allow for growth now, because there's a big fear of maybe not a recession, but of stagnation. Because during the Biden administration, we all know there was massive growth, but high inflation going along with it. Now we're seeing the inflation weakening, and perhaps now the solution is to allow for additional growth to ensure that we don't see stagnation. So what do you think about the decision? Do you think that it was too little, too late? Are you happy about the state of the economy now, Greg?
Yeah, of course. So I want to start off by mentioning your point about hiring. So, especially with all of the deportations under the second Trump administration, hiring and replacing the jobs of illegal immigrants that people claim a lot of Americans don't actually want to fill, that was a conversation for quite some time. And especially now, when we're seeing the interest rates be cut and a shortage of people who want to work, not a shortage of people, but of people who want to work, when we're seeing that, it means that there's an issue of our country. It means that people could either A, have too much money or are too comfortable. That's why we have seen the Trump administration take action against this. We have seen him being more strict with social security programs, where he set a work requirement to make sure people aren't living on these programs. You see, and just a few days ago, I was actually on an interview in a podcast where the host brought up social Social Security in the conversation about socialism. They asked if I believe that Social Security is a form of socialism. And to be honest, yes, how it is used right now, Social Security is a socialist program. How it is intended to be used, though, it is not a socialist program at all, because the whole entire point of Social Security is to be a temporary step up for people on it. However, now we have a culture of people staying on Social Security. That leads them to not have a job because they don't need one, they have enough money. They will not go up in society, their kids will stay on Social Security, and it will be a chain of events that will lead to a widespread failure. And that is the concern. So we should be addressing that. Now, look, specifically relating to the cut in the interest rates, I think that everyone was expecting this to happen. It has been months before the Fed finally cut the interest rate, so it has passed enough time. Donald Trump has been pressuring um, the Fed to do this. So overall, this is a good move. However, we do have to understand that our economy is still not fully stable. We still don't know the full impact of the tariffs, even though now it's looking very good. There's only positive impacts. We still don't know how people are going to react when the big, beautiful bills work requirement comes into action. And we also don't know how people are going to react with the tax cuts. So, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and regarding Social Security, it's a very important point. The culture of reliance on Social Security, once an individual reaches, say, the age of 62, and then that's the earliest you can get onto it, or up until 67, most do it around 65. There's an issue that, especially recently, people have not been saving up because they are banking on the fact that they will receive Social Security payments once they reach retirement age, or they have some sort of agreement via pension with their employers. And the problem is, if people aren't thinking 2, 3 steps ahead up until their retirement, I'm a big proponent of investing at a young age. Then, if the entire program goes broke, then a lot of people are just going to be left without anything. That's a huge concern. Social
Yeah.
Security has $150 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Now, the thing is, a lot of the people that are owed this money by the United States government are already dead. So that's not accounted for in the number. But still, there are trillions of dollars worth of unfunded liabilities in addition to the national debt, which is continuing to explode. And we're looking now in every single Western society, including now the United States with the deportations, that the age or the population size of the youth is decreasing, meaning there are going to be less people in the tax pool to pay payroll tax that goes into funding Social Security. So we're getting a ballooning older population in a smaller young population, meaning that there's going to be less income revenue for Social Security. And then all those people that were banking on it this entire time, they may not be able to receive it unless we increase taxes on people that are currently working. And that's why, again, we need to try to reduce the reliance on those federal programs. They're very important, obviously, as they were created during the Great Depression for a very noble cause. But yeah, there is a big problem with it being a house of cards that can potentially cause issues down the line. So yeah, that's just one aspect of all of this. I wonder what you think about not just Social Security, but I suppose the entire Trump policy
Yeah.
in relation to economics, like perhaps the inflation angle, because that's a big talking point for Trump, saying that, yeah, inflation's been going down pretty much since he's come in. And now is a good time to lower the interest rates in order to allow for more GDP growth.
Yeah, definitely. So, first off, I want to make sure that our viewers understand this is not an issue with only Social Security. It's an issue with Medicaid, Medicare, and other handouts, SNAP, and all of these programs are made to, again, uplift people, but they don't do that. They instead have people staying on the programs. That is the concern. And you bring up the ballooning older population. We have a birth rate in this country that is the lowest in history right now. It's about 1.6 births per woman, I guess, and it is by far the lowest. It's highly concerning because when we see our birth rate only decreasing at a rate where it's already wasn't that high, 10, 15 years ago, it begs the question, how are we going to treat the older generation? How are we going to pay for them? we're not going to be able to afford it. You know, the very basic of a strong society, of a strong country, is to have a strong birth rate. And without that, we will fail. And that's unfortunately what it is looking like today. But to answer your question about the Trump administration's impact on the economy, I mean, overall, the tariffs were a great success. And if you disagree with that, I would ask why, because so far we haven't seen any negative effects of the tariffs that every economist predicted. We have only seen positive effects. We have seen a foreign direct investment of over $5 trillion in the next 4 years. We have seen that manufacturers are finally building back into the United States. Manufacturers are investing into the United States. So there's no bad aspect of these tariffs. In general, Trump's economy is surprisingly functioning at a rate that I didn't expect before. I expected the tariffs to at least affect our economy, but really they only affected it, you know, they were good, they were beneficial. We haven't seen any horrible effects, and that just goes to show that what Trump says he actually means, and when he actually implements it, it will be done and it will be done correctly. So overall, Trump's stance in the economy was wonderful. I mean, truly, in the last year, he has probably made more of an impact in the economy than any other president in the last 5 decades. And I say that, with other presidents who have made a bigger impact, negatively than they have positively. So it's really impressive. But Ofer, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so to begin with tariffs, you listed out a pretty comprehensive list of the benefits. Manufacturing jobs are coming back. There are deals and a lot of foreign direct investment coming from South Korea, Japan, Gulf states. All of that is already being done. And there was recently progress on the trade deal with China. So again, tariffs are being used as the lever of pressure against all those countries in those negotiations that will be used to help improve American industries. That's one benefit. Now, a problem is a lot of people are looking at the poor jobs reports and trying to claim that it's as a result of the tariffs, as a result of Trump's poor mismanagement of the economy. The problem is that's accounting for the fact that people are also getting deported and are self-deporting. We have between 1 million to 1.5 million people that have self-deported, that have left on their own because they're scared of ICE getting to them first. And so, of course, in the process, they're leaving their jobs. But when you look at native-born Americans and their employment rates, they've actually gone up since Trump's been in office. And then you have to average that, of course, with the illegal immigrants and the other people that were here on visas and such that left. So that's a part of the calculation as well. And now that means that there's going to be more job openings, especially with manufacturing jobs coming in. And yes, that means that now perhaps there's going to be an opportunity for higher employment rates, higher labor participation rates. That is all positive. It's things that people have been yearning for 30 years, ever since NAFTA was signed, ever since Obama signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. And now a lot of that is beginning to manifest under Trump's helm. And the problem is, and this is something that Biden did, and it's very smart in the short term. He let in those 20 million plus illegal immigrants in order to flood the job markets and very quickly correct the economy after COVID, in order to very, very quickly bring back GDP up, meaning that there would be more investment, more government spending, and that would cover everybody's welfare benefits, that people would get these one-time $1,000 checks. That was all good in the short term. But now, as Biden sort of left office and we started to see the effects of the supply chains, the effects of inflation that dragged on for 3 to 4 years, and now Trump's actually deporting people. So now the job market is getting constricted as a whole, not for the natives, but as a whole, because we're looking at jobs in the United States. That's obviously going to lead to byproducts. So that sort of shock therapy that Trump's done, both with immigration and with tariffs, is a part of why we've seen a slowdown in growth. It's part of why the job markets appears, at least on surface level, to be not increasing at the rate that people want. And it's also why inflation is a bit sort of sticking right now at like high 2% rather than reaching 2% as well. But 2026 is going to be a very good year. I'm sure of that, because all the trends, they're going to point in that direction once the economy adjusts for all of the sort of artificial injections that Biden made. Once that wears off and Trump's effects come in, there's going to be a lot of positive developments, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. And you bring up the 2026 fiscal year, and we see that that's when the tax effects will come in. So we'll see if the Big Beautiful Bill was actually as good as we believe right now, which I'm sure it will be. But to also add on, there has been a lot of other effects with the tariffs, militarily speaking. Look at the EU right now. The EU signed probably the greatest deal in history of America with agreeing to militarize. And not only that, but they gave a generous offer to the United States. I don't know, you're very well versed in it, so I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah, look, they agreed on a very long list of things that previously they were very hesitant to agree to, not with Biden, not with first Trump administration. It appears as if Trump coming in and saying that I'm no longer going to subsidize Ukraine, I'm going to try to reach a resolution, that really jettisoned them, and it served as shock therapy as well. They realized that there were going to be consequences for inaction, so they immediately mobilized and started to offer Trump concessions, including hundreds of billions of dollars in military purchases from the United States over the next 4 years. So they're going to purchase equipment for their own air defense systems, for their own air force, for their own artillery pieces. They need 155 millimeter rounds, 122 millimeter rounds, whatever it may be, for mortars, for howitzers, for self-propelled guns, all of that. And that's needed for deterring Russia. It's needed also in order to send some of the excess surplus to Ukraine, because the European interest is in ensuring that Ukraine remains a substantial buffer zone in between the eastern border of Europe and then Russia's western border. And that's all being done due to Trump's pressure on them. And so from a military perspective, like you were saying, it's extremely positive. It also means that now the Department of Defense, they're going to need to start really ramping up production. They've committed to a lot of new projects, including some new cheaper drones that are sort of mimicking Russian drones that were produced over the past 3 years. Also, a couple of cruise missiles that are a bit cheaper. They're called ERAMs. And so they pledged to send about 2,300 of them to Ukraine. That's going to take a year or two until it gets into effect. But all of those standardization measures in order to ensure that the military is mass producing, which is it was not doing under Biden, by the way, and it hasn't been doing since the fall of the Soviet Union. So you can't blame
Yeah.
one person for it. But now Trump's changing that. And it's very important, not because we want to go to war, but because we want to show, first of all, that we have strong industry in the United States, which is going to employ hundreds of thousands of people with good paying jobs, but also because it serves as a deterrence factor against Russia and China. So yes, like you were asking, it's a very important development.